This is the circuit board for the turntable control unit. My own top part is the circuit board, my own. Underneath, slaved are two Arduino Unos. One is for control with the software for the actual turntable, and the other one is the interface for the DCC control. This board then goes into its own box. These are the parts that make up the box assembly that houses the electronics. Right, this is the build of the box that houses the turntable electronics. It's a very straightforward build. Start off with the base front labelled. Two squares are engraved, and they have to have two packers placed one on top of the other and glued in position. A couple of dollops of super glue, line it up, and push down. Do the same on the other one. Doesn't have to be too precise, but try and get it within the marks. Then the second one goes on top, so it makes up a 4mm pack. That's what the circuit boards sit on. So that's all that part done, so put that to one side. Right, next job is to fit the nut plates. So you need this piece. It's a bit flimsy, and yes, it's going to be broken in that part there. You'll see there's some engraving for where the nuts go, because you've got a bit of carbon build up. You just go around with a small screwdriver, you can see that the actual carbon then disappears. So I'll show you, there we go. You can see it there. If I go around with the screwdriver, and just cleans the carbon out. So if we go around and do that on all the others, and then starting at the corners, if you find the corner pieces with the hexagonal shaping, they are handed, so you've got to find the ones that line up with the actual nut itself there. So as you can see, there's a straight edge straight, so that one lines up there. And move over, this one, as you can see, doesn't line up over there, so you've got to do is turn it over through 180 degrees. So if we then go to the other corner, do a check, that one's not going to line up, so turn him over. Now you can see he will line up the nuts. And then on this one, he doesn't, turn him over, and he will line up. So that's the first stage. So we get those in position ready. And then we go and get some nuts. Right, so I'll just show you one corner first. For this you need some white PVA glue. So the first thing to do is to drop a nut in to the actual engraving. Should fall in. And then we're going to glue a nut plate over the top. But for this we need to add a bit of PVA. So not too much. You can see where I've put it. Turn him over. Drop him onto the nut. And then with your finger on the nut, so it will hold it square to each other, just check that the plate lines up in line with the other part. There should be a small gap running down each side. So I'll just show you one more corner. and then you can do the other ones. So you take a nut, drop them in, get the nut plate ready, make sure it's the right one. EVA glue, try to drop it, and drop him over the nut, and push down with your finger, so you're pushing the nut into the engraved mark, and you may have to just manoeuvre the top slightly to square it up. It's important it is squared, because when we fit the sides, if it's not square, it'll stop the sides going in, although there is a very small tolerance there to allow for some slight misalignment. So let's go ahead and do the other corners. When you've done the corners, you do need to go along and just remove any excess glue just sticking out from the sides. Move on, and we can now do the inside ones. Again, make sure that the side ones, they do line up. I'll just do one side. You can see again how we do it. Exactly the same, nut goes in. Make sure it will go over, it lines up with the nut. Bit of white PVA over the nut and pushing down. And again, make sure that it lines up with the edge, and there should be a very small gap, which I'll bring up and show you. As you can see, there's a slight gap or ridge there. It doesn't actually touch the edge, so there's a bit of a clearance. That's as it should be. So do that on the other four, and we'll move on to the next bit. I've done all my side ones. Again, it's important that you remove any glue that is oozed out down the sides. We can now move on to the next section. The next part involves putting the captive parts over the nuts to stop them falling out. Now, the easiest way to do this is to put a screw in from underneath, just finger tight so it's showing at the top, which I've done there, hopefully you can see. And then we do a trial fit. Doesn't matter which way up this one goes, you should drop over the thread and line up with the piece underneath. So we need to glue that one in position now, but only put the glue on the extremes. We don't want any glue going on the actual thread itself. So I'll do that so you can see what I'm going to do. On there, a little bit there. Let's see if we can see it right. So there we go, and you can see I put the glue on. So we turn them over and drop him over the bolt, push him down and make sure he lines up at the edges. A little bit of pressure. And then with the knife blade, remove any excess again from the edge. And we do that with the other three corners. Well, that's my four corners done. Now we do exactly the same on the 5 straight edges. Do exactly the same process as before. Check it drops over. Put a glue. White PVA again. Drop him over. Make sure he lines up down the edge. Remove any excess. So do that on the other 4 positions. Right, so that's all my caps done. I would advise at this point in actually taking out the bolts. So although it's a white PVA glue, if it gets on the threads it can make them very, very tight. Well, the next stage is assembly. It's a little bit fiddly because there's a lot of parts that all line up at the same time. So basically is you have the base. It's got the base front, so I'm going to make that face towards me. And then you've got the surround, which goes with the cutout at the back. So just lay that there. You've got a support which goes halfway in, so if you lay that in that position there. Then you have the back, which has got writing on it, so that needs to go with the writing on the outside, so we'll put him there. One that's labelled right hand top, the writing goes the inside, so top is like that. And you've got left hand top, then you've got front top. Right, so put that one to one side. So it will all drop in very, very easily. Careful not to break the parts. It's fairly obvious how it all goes. But you don't glue it until you've actually got the whole thing clipped together. No real easy way of doing this. Just working your way round. So we're going to do the right hand top. That was the easy bit. Now we have to fit 2 parts at the same time. We have to put some elastic bands round. And let's see what happens if that helps. This is the first one off I've done. So it's a learning exercise for me as well. So if we put an elastic band around there, not too big because it'll pull it in too much otherwise. And then we want to put one at that end. It's just trying to pull itself apart at the moment. So we'll put one there. Right, that looks like that could be the way to do it. Right, that then allows me to fit the end piece in. Doesn't, it goes halfway down with the slot facing out. And then, yeah, because of the elastic bands we can pull it apart, so that fits quite nicely. So that's good. And then we can fit the rear on. It'll only go one way, and that should line up with all the other marks. Oh, I've got quite a rigid structure now, so at this point I would suggest we put an elastic band around the whole thing. And I'll take these off, or move them up out the way anyway. So we can then sit it down squarely on a flat base. In fact, take these off completely, but leave the ones going around the outside. Maybe add another one just to be sure. So set them down, set one on top. Onto a flat surface. Now what we have to do is with some super glue, first of all make sure it's all pushed in firmly and tight, there's no gaps. We then have to go around with super glue and actually, if you look where the lugs are on the outside, then we actually put super glue on the inside, and then on where that one is you can see you need to push it in so it's in firmly, touching the inside, a little bit of super glue, and go around on the inside and do all those lugs. Just a smear of super glue. I'll show you how much to put on there. Let's to start off there. So it's just a little bit where the lug is. Hardly anything. There we go, you can just see, just a little bit. And that'll wick itself in. So go around all the bottom surfaces and do all those. Right, you can do that side, and that side on the inside. We'll come to the back piece in a moment. Next thing is to do the corners. Again, try and get some super glue right into the corners, and you'll see where the lugs are on the outside. Again, try and get super glue where the lugs are. As I've done there. And then move round to the other corner. Do the same there. Which I've done there. Right, the next task is to glue the rear. Now as it can't really get in there, we'll have to do this from the outside. And we don't want to get too much muck everywhere on the outside. So just pack that there a moment. So what we need to do is to get a small piece of tissue. So what we do is we're holding down, so there's a bit of pressure there, just put a bit of super glue where that lug is. And then with the tissue just wipe off the excess. And we'll just get some super glue ready. For pressure. Rub in where the lugs are, just soak down in, and then wipe away any excess. And then do that on the outside ones. Then excess wipe off. That a few seconds to dry, and then we can do the supporting piece, which is the halfway up one. You can get in there with the super glue. You can do the corners where the lug is. And check it's pushed firmly towards the back. And again, go in where the lugs are. Do that on both sides. Make sure it's firmly pushed in and squeezed in tight. Right, next job is to do the actual corners up high, if you can see where I'm pointing now. So again, super glue in up as high as you can, and let it run down the corner. Do this one the same. Do that on the other side, on the other corner, and down underneath. And while pushing in from the back, go in to the gap we've got here and just run some super glue along the back. And then hold that in firmly until that goes off. Our next task now is to glue in the top surface here that the lid goes down onto. So a bit of movement there to some tolerances in there. We've got to glue this into position, but we want to do it so we don't get any, well, the minimum amount of glue on the top as possible. So we need the super glue, which is the thin one again, and a tissue. A very, very small amount where each lug is. Take your time over this, pushing it out. Just a small amount of super glue where the lug is, and then tease the glue up and down so there's no fillet there. Just make sure it soaks in to where the actual lug is. And use a piece of tissue to make sure that there's none on the surface. So we go ahead and do that now on all the lugs all the way around. Right, I've been round now, I've done all my lugs all the way around, and then it's useful just to run around with a knife blade in the corner. Make sure there's no bits of glue left in the corner. If there is, that will stop the lid fitting. Also, you have to go careful that you don't get any glue in where the threads are. Right, that's your basic solid box now, so you can take off the elastic bands. We can now do a trial fit with the top. Again, with the cutout at the back, as we are there, that should drop in quite nicely. Bit of a tight fit. If it is a tight fit, which mine is, then you may have to do a little bit of sanding on the edges. Again, if you sand more on the back side than the front, give a slight taper, which will then no doubt improve the fit. Still a bit tight. There we go, that's a really nice fit all the way around. Yeah, so I'll take 0.1 off all the way around, so that'll be a much better fit. So that's your box that the electronics goes into. So we can do a check now that all the screws fit. So just slot them in. Remember, it's wood, it's not metal, it's not hard plastic, so we don't want to just grind the head down to the wood, and that should sit quite firmly and squarely on the base, which it does. So now we can move on to the next section. So what we'll do is we'll take the lid off again. Because we have some parts to fit to the underside of the lid before we actually fit the circuit board. So just the actual surface here will have a light varnish coating to seal it. This one you see here at the moment hasn't been coated, but the rest of the box will be bare MDF. It's up to you whether you paint it, varnish it, whatever you want to do with it. What I coat this one is, this is where your hands go on as you're moving things around and switches. And being MDF, it will absorb the grease out your hands. So I give this a coating of a varnish. So pop them out. And now we're going to add the parts onto the inside of there. Right, there's 2 parts to add. We use super glue for both of them. So you turn them over. You've got the one with the big hole. It's not a square, it's an oblong. If you try and put it on the wrong way, you'll see that there's a gap either side. So rotate it again until it fits precisely with the hole. And then using some super glue, just touch down the sides. Obviously make sure you're doing this on the underside. And then the other part we have to add is a piece of acrylic. It's 10mm thick, and that goes over that hole there. And again we have to use super glue to put that in, and that holds the dip switch for your addresses in position. Same process as before. Put a super glue around the edge and then work your way around to the other side. And then down the other side. And we then leave that to dry. There we go, so that's the Perspex one and that's the other one. When you turn over, you'll see that they line up. So you can't see them when you look through. Right, the next part is to prepare the circuit board. The switches, the 2 forward switches, or the single pole move changeover switches, have 3mm packing. So it's the body, 3mm, and then the nut down on top of it. Same on that one, 3mm and the nut down on top. And then the 2-pole changeover switch at the back has a 2mm and a nut that goes down on top of it. That will then bring the line for the body for the top in the right location. Ledger I've already done at the right height, so we can then offer that now up to our part here. So if you put the switches, obviously can be anywhere you like at the moment, but try and put them all going in the same direction. It makes the alignment a lot easier. And then drop down on, the switches are dropped through, heatsink will come up through, and it will rest down onto the dip switch. So then we have to add our nuts. Now I had no washers on these at all. Don't think it's necessary. There's 2 sizes of nuts because of the manufacturers of the switches are different. Let's put the nuts out so you can actually see. And I'll just bring it up into focus. The actual one of the nuts is more flatter than the other 2. Now the one that's the more flatter one goes on the one switch there, and the other 2 go on those there. So I'll just tighten those up, or I won't tighten them, I'll just slip them on. You'll know if you got the wrong one on the wrong place because it won't go. It's a different thread. And I'm in the right position, screwed down. In my case, I've just used a small pair of pliers just to nip them up. Try not to damage the surface of the box. You find the track selector comes up through the centre of the hole. The heatsink should line up in the middle of the square, and if you look down into the hole there, you should see the various dip switches. Now when you view it from the side, it won't come out too well. There'll be a slight incline going up in relation to the board. That's normal because the actual unit sits on that point there. So that's ready now to be installed into the box. It's a bit fiddly putting it in the box. You have to feed it in from the back. So let me just explain how it goes in. When it goes in, it actually sits on this piece here, and the connectors will poke out through the back there. And then these two packers here that we glued in earlier on sit underneath the two Arduino boards and holds it all firm and solid. So we slot in from the back. See, it's gone straight in, and then you lower it down, tight fit, and now you're in a position that you can actually do the screws up. And we can move on to fitting the control knob on. So then we fit the control knob. If you rotate the control fully clockwise, and then you find the control knob will slot on, and if you set it so that it's just past the line there, I'll bring that up so you can see that in focus. So it's just past the line, and then if you go all the way around, it should stop about the same the other side there, as you can see. If that's coming out at all right, yep. So that's your control knob in the right position. And you can obviously slot it on to get it mid-position. Connections on the back, straightforward. You take those two to your DCC to the rail. That connector there is an RJ45, but it's not an internet connection, so please don't use it as that. You will blow this box up and your internet connection. This is a bespoke design to go from here to the actual turntable. And then on the other side you've got your power in, which is 12 volts DC. Central core is plus, outside is negative. Again, I supply a power supply with it. If you want to put your own on, it's a standard 12 volts DC 2 amp power supply. So that's your only connections you need from that end. If you're not using DCC and you're going to use this manually, then obviously you don't need to connect anything up to there. So that's now the box finished. So we'll do some construction now on the actual turntable, and then we'll connect it all up and we'll go through the operation of it, setting it up and how to use it. And then we'll go into the DCC side of it and how to change the addresses and set that side up. So up till now, nice and straightforward.